welcome to the strangest gig I've ever played. True tales from the studio and the stage. I'm your host, Chris J. Norwood. On the podcast with us today is one Diana Cox. Diana is the vice president for Kessler Presents. Kessler Presents is the company behind the Kessler Theater, the Heights Theater in Houston, and the beautifully reopened Longhorn Ballroom here in Dallas. She's a lovely person, and I had so much fun getting to chat with her, so let's get to it. Hello, and welcome back to The Strangest Gig. Again, I am your host, Chris J. Norwood. Before we get to today's guest, this is for any of you Austin area listeners. My band, Chris J. Norwood and the Knockdown Dragout, will be playing at the famed Continental Club Saturday, May 18th. It's a lot of fun. I'm very excited to get to play this storied venue, and we're going to party. We're playing with Austin band, Nick Parr and the Selfless Lovers. They are fantastic, and it's going to be a really fun night. So come see us. That's May 18th at the Continental Club in Austin. Now, if you know me at all, or if you've listened to this podcast before, you know what I think of the Kessler Theater. It is my favorite venue in town. The staff there is amazing. The venue is just top-notch. And part of the reason for that is because of our next guest. Diana Cox is vice president for Kessler Presents, which manages the Kessler Theater, also the Heights Theater in Houston, and the newly reopened Longhorn Ballroom. Diana is our first guest to come from the other side of the music business, the booking, promotion, venue side. And she had a lot of really great insight and advice for any young musicians trying to break into some of these venues, which so many of us are. She and the Kessler have been very supportive of me and my music and so many other local artists. They do a really great job of supporting local talent. She is a wonderful human being, and I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, getting to sit down and chat with her, and I think you will as well. So without further ado, here is Diana Cox. Diana, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm very excited that you're here. Excited to talk to you. I have a lot of questions, and so let's just dive in. Tell me about your current gig, and I'll use gig broadly and loosely. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so I'm the vice president of Kessler Presents. We're the operating company of the Kessler Theater in Dallas, the Heights Theater in Houston. We present shows through Kessler Presents Austin, and we operate the newly reopened Longhorn Ballroom.
Love it. And I love the Longhorn. I told Jeff when he was here. Jeff was on, I guess, several months ago. It's beautiful. What y'all have done there is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's, we've established like kind of a reputation with the Kessler and the Heights Theater as like very much, they're historic movie houses made into listening rooms, which is lovely. Yeah. And we're proud of them. And they are, they are what made everything else possible. But the Longhorn is a different beast. I don't know. I feel like whatever you believe in or whatever, I feel like you can feel the spirits that are in that building, the 100%. History of it, the soul of the building.
Well, even the way you set up the memorabilia.
Oh, yeah. I mean, having, we kind of, our little tag is kind of like a beer in hand museum vibe, but it reminds you and reinforces all the things that have been there before, which is just really cool. I mean, I don't know, we were getting deliveries of some of that memorabilia before we were installing it.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, in our office, I'm like, mail came in, unboxing something. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm holding James Brown's robe right now. Please put that back in the box immediately. Yes. And like, what is this heavy thing? Oh, it's just Tammy Wynette's beaded blouse that weighs like 20 pounds.
Amazing.
Like weird stuff.
Yeah.
But it came out so lovely. And I think it just really tells the story of the soul in the building.
Absolutely.
And that's, we've always been about preservation, like company stuff as an organization, but really like educating and sharing that and being able to bring people into it more is cool. It makes it special.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm getting a little off track here, but I want to ask about Longhorn because I know there's more that's going to be happening to the grounds there.
Yeah. So there's a lot of big plans coming down the pike for that. It was always part of the plan. Mm-hmm. There was a 3-phase approach, which was number one, get the ballroom open, right? Mm-hmm. Because if what we do, our company is known for, and what we do is present live music, we better get the venue open first.
Right.
So that has obviously happened in March of 23, and then we are in progress of getting ready some tenants to move into what's the old motel building is what a lot of people call it. It's where there was a restaurant there for a long time, and other kinds of storage and things. But that's next step is getting that up and getting some folks moved in.
Yeah.
And we'll probably be putting our offices over there, it looks like.
Awesome.
So that's exciting.
Yeah.
Have a little more space than
Expanding
we've got now.
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. And then the next phase is the amphitheater. So the overflow parking lot, which is our back parking lot right now, will have a dual purpose to also be an outdoor venue space as well with an amphitheater.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's Dallas doesn't really have like at least a private outdoor amphitheater like that for boutique size. I mean, yes, there's things at Fair Park. You can talk about Main Street Garden.
Sure.
But,
What would the cap be?
5,000 to 6,000 is what
Oh,
the
wow.
intent
Okay,
is.
yeah.
So it'll be, there's just not something like that in Dallas proper. All our competitive neighboring city or neighboring cities seem to have something. Why shouldn't Dallas?
Absolutely.
So think that'll be a huge addition for us as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Getting back to the Kessler, you said vice president of Kessler Presents.
Yeah.
What all does that entail?
So I kind of oversee our management team. So we have a great team of folks that do everything from the talent buying to the private events to establishing how we do things in our venues, marketing, all of those. So we have a really great team, and I kind of manage the team. Right. I also oversee fun stuff like human resources, but I also get to, everybody's favorite thing. But I get to do some other fun stuff in my role that I've kind of held on to. I do build a lot of relationships with people local artists. Hi.
Hello.
So I get to do that. And then I do get to be involved in seeking out new artists and doing some of the support artist booking.
Yeah.
And really getting to see what's out there, what's coming, how can we get someone on a bill that makes sense, and being strategic about it, but also giving a good platform to locals when we can, or even if they're not local, regional, or others that are up and coming in genres that make sense for our business. Yeah.
And how long have you been at the Kessler?
I almost 13 years.
Wow. What did you start out doing?
Or 13 years. I'm exaggerating a little bit. 11 years, excuse me.
Sure.
So I started out doing events and part-time admin work, and I was also at that time in the Texas Army National Guard, and I was teaching at Tarrant County College, teaching government. So I kind of had a lot of things going on, and over time the position grew, and so it became full-time pretty quickly. And then it was taking more and more time, and so I had to start making decisions about my other things that I was doing. And so over time I was like, okay, well, I've served my time with the Guard, and I think it's probably time to step back from that. Yeah. So I left the National Guard and kept teaching, and then, okay, well, now I don't really have time to do that too. So I stepped back from that as well. And so now this is my only full-time gig.
That's awesome.
Is
the Kessler kind of your first foray into what I would call the music business?
Actually, no.
Okay.
I actually had done, couple of things. So back when I played roller derby, I would work the door at some bars in Deep Ellum sometimes, and I got to help do some of the band booking for the roller derby games for the Dallas Derby Devils. Once upon a time, I have not played in a very long time, but so I got to do a little bit of that, and then I ended up in a band myself because of that.
Okay.
And then from there, I ended up working at LaGrange, which is now
LaGrange,
3 Links.
yeah.
So I worked with LaGrange for about a year or two.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What did you play in the band?
I sang.
You sang? Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of music?
It was just rock and roll.
Yeah.
But we got lumped in with rockabilly a lot because we had an upright bass. Because if you have an upright bass, it must be a rockabilly band, apparently.
Of course.
That's what everybody assumes.
Yeah.
I started out kind of like go-go dance and backup vocals, and then ended up doing about 50% of the vocals for the band by the time I left it. And
that's cool.
Yeah, that was my first band. So yeah.
That's awesome. So you're kind of the first person that we've had on the podcast that's kind of on the other side of this business of booking and promoting. And I want to ask a couple things because I think it would be really helpful to people. You said you part of your job is looking at support acts and that sort of thing. What can a support act do to kind of get y'all's attention?
Yeah. I one thing we say all the time, and I think in my marketing team and everybody kind of say this with a unified voice, is there's kind of just a few components that I think that any artist needs to have if they're trying to get booked. And some of them seem super obvious, but we also are always find people that are surprised. So I share it not in a way of trying to state the obvious, but do you have a photo?
Yeah.
A photo. It doesn't have. You don't have to go pay a expensive professional photographer, but a photo that can be used for promotional uses. Right. Your friend that's really good with an iPhone can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Do you have a social media presence? I get that social media is a beating, and to try to base everything off of likes and things is not necessarily it, but there has to be a presence, right? A easy to locate presence at that.
So how much do you take that into account? Like if you have two artists coming to you and one has, let's say 1,000 Facebook likes, but they're super active in the community. You see that they're playing a bunch. You see videos of them. They're obviously talented versus somebody who may have like 5,000 to 10,000 likes on Facebook or however many Spotify spins, but they're just not doing much.
Right.
How would you weigh those two artists?
So there's actually more factors to it than that. I will look at that, right?
Okay.
I will personally look at that. And then also I will say demographically, depending on the age of the artist, I'll cross-reference their Instagram because I know if you're a younger audience skews Instagram as opposed to Facebook. But there are some components. If they are super active in the community, number one, are they oversaturating?
Gotcha.
But also, if they're not, or if that's not the case, but then they don't have as many quote unquote followers or likes, but they're getting engagement.
Yeah.
That makes a bigger difference in some regards as opposed to the number of followers.
Gotcha.
But at the end of the day, it's not 100% based on that because, there's people that have a massive following on socials, but don't necessarily have an audience that's engaged or tied to them.
And I've seen that a lot where you'll have, especially younger artists, it seems, will have tons of Spotify spins, but they can't draw 10 people.
Right. And so, and Spotify's kind of my third check. I still kind of start for me,
Gotcha.
I know other people on our team, everybody kind of looks at different things. That's kind of I kind of go Facebook, Instagram, and Spotify. Yeah. That's kind of my rotation on it. But also if it's something we believe in, and that's very subjective, obviously. That's not an objective metric. If it's someone or something we believe in and think that it is the best fit for that, and I can make the case for it, that's going to win every day.
And I want to say thank you for that, personally, because I've had the benefit of that, and it's such a huge thing for artists of what I'll say at my level in this town. And it's so rare to have venues that'll look at an artist and believe in the artist and want to help support that artist. So thank you so much for that, first off. And that seems to be rare for venues. And why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, the live music is in its own way very competitive, right? I mean, I think that we all know that, getting people to commit to show up to something in modern times is an interesting feat. And there's things that we have to dance around too. I mean, some touring artists are very particular about what they want on the stage before them for a variety of reasons, rightfully so. Sure. You've probably played shows where the trajectory of the show, the vibe feels a little weird. It has to kind of make sense musically. There's a flow to it. There's a strategy to it. So we have to think about that. And a lot of venues do. And I think that, just everybody comes in with a different ethos. We like to think that we're different in how we do it. So, that's part of the reason that the Longhorn's so special to us. And we've got artists that have, they started out opening at the Kessler. And then they headlined the Kessler. Now they're opening at the Longhorn. And then they can headline at the Longhorn. And then maybe open on the amphitheater. And then headline the amphitheater. That's the dream concept for us with developing artists.
Absolutely.
And that's what we believe in. So, and me personally too, I've already gotten to see a couple folks do a little bit of that trajectory. We had one last week. At the Longhorn, we had Charlie Crockett was an example of that.
Absolutely.
Started out opening at the Kessler and then headlined, and now he's headlining Longhorn. And our Joshua Ray Walker's on that. He had been doing that too. So I think having those tangible examples of artists growing like that. Obviously, there's a million factors at play when any artist grows like that, but that's what I don't know. That's kind of what gives you the satisfaction in this being on the business side of it. Because really, everybody's like, "Are you at the show tonight?" I spend Monday through Friday sitting at a desk in an office most of the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm a day walker, as we say, and and spend a lot of time. Like I joke, I'll hide out in the office, guys. But I do try to get out. I go to a lot of music, but it's a different side of it, and that's really I think what we always try to remember. We're presenting live music, and that's huge, and that's a huge part of me. And I won't go too far on a tangent of that, but I mean, I started going to like small shows when I was 16, but my first concert when I was like 14, 15, and from then, like there's a moment when you see your first live show. For me, at least, when I saw my first live concert experience, and I'm like, what am I experiencing right now?
Well, I think that's what makes you and the rest of the people that work at the Kessler unique. In that y'all clearly there's a love of music, and not so much a love of making money as a venue, which obviously is important too.
Yeah, we are a business, but
absolutely.
But no, everybody. I mean, it's we laugh at everybody. I don't know. Let's give away a business secret, I guess. One of our favorite, if we ever hire somebody, one of our interview questions is always, "What was the last concert you went to?" Yeah, because it's not a trick question. Yeah, it's not a test.
Sure.
But have you been to a concert lately? Like, come on. Are you really a live music fan? Come on. Absolutely. That's all. That's the only thing we're probably testing there. And we get things from all over. Like, we don't, everybody likes different things. But but at the same time, like, everybody there is a live music fan. And we've got a lot of people that are or have been musicians. Yeah.
That's awesome. Right? I want to get back to the kind of the booking question. Yeah. And it's fascinating to me because I think a lot of young artists struggle with this now. Like, how many booking emails would y'all say you get a week from people wanting to play at Kessler, Heights, any of them? Personal, like actually personally written, or the automated ones that you just teasing? There's some. No, that's good. My next question is what are some like email do's and don'ts that you may have? Yeah. So one other thing I always say to have is a live video. Mm-hmm. That's another critical thing because if we are going to pitch a band to open for a show, I got to have a video to send on. Yeah. Not just a Spotify link. I need a video. They need to see how you look on stage. So just as an aside, studio recording is fine for that, but preference is out and about video. Yeah. But yeah, I think, I'll say a big don't first. If you're going to send a mass one out, make sure you use blind copy. Because it's just a little, and we've all everybody's accidentally copied somebody or said the wrong business or whatever. But if you're going to send out a personal ask to be on a show, make sure you update what you're writing. Mm-hmm. Make sure you are clear. Hey, I am so-and-so. I'm from here. I'm this type of artist. Like, here's a link to this and this. By the way, I think I'd be a good fit for this show, which is also super helpful to us. Because then we aren't going to research like, well, what genre? I don't know this person. What genre? Do you know that? What genre are they? Who do they fit with? Actually asking for a specific date.
A couple of dates, a couple of specific shows, like do the homework and look at our calendar and see what looks like. I think that's helpful. But like the other thing is just the really, really generic, impersonal ones are, I get people that have managers. Sometimes management's going to send those out. I get it. Not a knock on that, but it's going to be a little less attention grabby than hey, I want to play your room. I think I'd be a good fit on this show. Here is my links. Here's my video. Let me know if it's possible. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really good advice.
Yeah. And the other thing is being flexible in format. What we run into sometimes, and as somebody that has a band with a lot of members, sometimes we are limited to logistically the actual stage footprint. For sure. And we have to keep that in mind. So if you have a full band, but you can do solo or duo or trio, share that info up front. Yeah. Because sometimes sometimes we can throw a duo on or a trio even. but sometimes I can't put the 8-piece band on. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I get it.
It's
tough.
I was like, so I don't want to make it. It's not about you, but you understand that. I know you know that.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. That's awesome. Well, now let's get into, obviously as a fan of live music, you've worked at the Kessler a long time, seen so many shows at the Kessler, Heights, and now Longhorn. Mm-hmm. What is the strangest gig you've ever seen?
Oh, man.
And I have one I want to ask about.
Okay.
Later, but tell me yours.
I would say it's hard to say strangest one that I've seen. Mm. I've had some, I think, that are probably experiences that are probably a little bit out of the norm.
Yeah.
I have had to do things like check decibel levels for animals. My first week so we were starting, we were doing one of the series at the zoo. They still do a music series. We're not involved anymore, but we were involved in the presenting the music series, and they, things you don't think about. We're worried about building a stage. We're worried about a PA. We're worried about lights, making sure people have seats, making sure the band's advanced. But, oh no, somebody had to bring the decibel reader out to make sure they don't upset the birds and the big cats. And that was definitely something that's not what you think about.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then we've done a couple of press events at our venues, where we've had the zoo bring in animals. Yeah. And we've had to adjust, the air conditioning or remind everybody to be quiet because penguins can only have so much time with a bunch of people around them, and sloths don't like loud noises.
Okay.
So those are fun facts that I've picked up that I don't think are probably what you expect in my line of work, but I've had to figure out. I got to go to the Kessler once before I actually ended up working there, which is not many times. It had been open for a few years at that point. I do distinctly remember my first show there was Bobby Patterson. Oh, yeah. And he was in the song, he sang a song, TCB or TYA. And my friend, it's actually the woman that used to own LaGrange, her and I were there, and we were like, we're just going to own that as our motto now. And I think that's just kind of what we did since. It's like, and I ended up there because, after that. So it's kind of funny.
I love Bobby Patterson. He's so great.
Oh yeah.
The fun aside fact, I worked with, I do commercial music on the side, and I worked with Bobby on a McDonald's commercial probably 10 years ago. And he came in and he was so sweet. He came in and sang his ass off and then left, and that was it. But
he's a character.
He's a character, and his manager, who I guess is his wife, right?
I believe so.
She was super sweet as well, and but they were a lot of fun to work with. So, but he came in and sang on this fun little McDonald's burger truck that I'd written.
That's hilarious. That's awesome, though.
So, what are some? The one I wanted to ask about is I remember Jeff saying, telling a story about George Winston coming in. George Winston, the jazz, kind of a jazz piano, classical jazz piano player, would come in and request to be in the space with the piano overnight so he could practice with the piano.
Yeah, I remember that request. I didn't make it to that show, so I don't. And that was a time where I let the venue team kind of like, hey, if y'all can make it happen, I mean, you kind of a deal. But yeah, we've gotten stuff like that. I mean,
what are some of the stranger writer requests that you've gotten?
We've had a request for a petting zoo. And then if you can't provide a petting zoo, at least bring your dogs. That kind of bring your dogs to work today kind of a thing, which is fine. Where there's a lot of dog lovers at our company, and sometimes dogs do make it to the office, so it's fine. That was probably one of the funniest that I've seen, and I appreciated that. I'm like, well, I want a petting zoo too. Can I have a petting zoo at work? Yeah. Like, come on, this is a great one. That was probably one of them. It's the varying degrees of extremity in the writers is always entertaining.
Is a lot of that just to make sure y'all are reading the writers and
that's the old story. That's the story. I don't know if that's always the case. I mean, some people are just real straightforward and like, I need these 5 items to snack on and some beers. Have a nice day. Yeah. And then some other bands typically bands that have been around longer, but not always. Yeah. you get, there, it's a lot longer document, and it's, some people have a lot of, you can tell they have fun writing them and write jokes in there and stuff like that. And those are the ones, they're trying to see if you read it. 'Cause they're like, or if you're actually reading this, I hope you're laughing, things like that. And I'm like, okay, somebody had a good time with this one. But at the end of the day, I mean, like, I don't know, we're as a company, we're super big on like accommodating artists.
Yeah.
So we're going to do our best. We did not get a petting zoo, to be clear. I do recall somebody brought their dog over to say hi.
There
so,
you go.
It was one of those. It was like, okay, within reason here, within reason.
For sure.
But yeah.
What is one of the more memorable shows that you remember seeing at the Kessler?
Gosh.
Is there one that kind of sticks out to you?
So I'm going to go back a ways on a couple. So a couple of them, and I'm going to blame, like, a pandemic killed my ability to remember what years thing happened. Sure. I don't know what it is, because those years were a blur.
Yes.
In our industry. Very, very glad to still be here after it, but it's, that's just like, I'm like, what year was that? I don't know. Those years don't count, do they? But the we were able to do Mavis Staples in the Kessler, and am I somebody? I won't pretend that I'm someone that has owned Staple Sisters records for decades or anything. But I'm aware of her legacy, you know. And that was just, one of those like epic goosebumps moments.
Yeah.
I'll say another one that was, we did, John Batiste, and he played in the round, and it was,
That's
just
amazing.
a joyous, beautiful show. But that was a lot of logistical challenges when your room is set up acoustically for all of your PA and your monitors and everything to be on stage. And now you're putting a piano in the middle of the room.
How did you adjust the PA? Did you have to bring down the speakers?
We didn't bring them down. We had to adjust how they were working. And I'm not a tech person, so I will not pretend. But we did have to move some the speakers out into the main part of the room, and bring in some different equipment than we normally have.
When was the jump? Was that before COVID?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he was on the Late Show at that point, though. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But we've also, like, I don't know, I got to see like this. There's Seshi Ramos is this like, I don't know. He does like acoustic guitar and raps. I don't know what else to say. He does rap kind of stuff. But he was opening for somebody else on a tour run, and he grabbed his acoustic guitar, hopped down in the middle of the crowd, and is with no mic, just playing and doing his like spoken word. And he does some singing with like rap and sing, doing that in the middle of this crowd. And then it was just like, it's just a moment, you know what I mean? Like that one was just a really cool one to me. And then now he's in a band that was on the No Effects tour.
Wow,
so it's like, so I was like, I saw him in the Kessler playing in the middle of the crowd. Now he's up on that stage at this festival. Okay.
That's
but
so cool,
it's just kind of neat. The way things kind of, different artists pop up in different ways, and very not in same vein of genres sometimes.
Yeah, it's all different.
So, yeah.
One thing I always appreciate about the Kessler is y'all are very intentional about it being a listening room.
Yeah.
How often are you having to remove people for not abiding by the listening room standards?
Remove, I'd say rarely.
Pretty rare.
Remind, probably more regularly.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been at seated shows, and we also do standing shows there. Yeah. Now, if we're doing a stand-up show, like we did, put on Low Cut Connie a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Killer show, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Incredible.
But that's a stand-up show. Nobody's telling anybody to hush at that show.
Right.
I mean, I'm just saying that it's loud.
Yeah.
It is raucous. I mean, even in this past week with we had Kurt Vile and then Easy Action, which is like a post-hardcore band. Yes, we had a post-hardcore band at the Kessler.
Amazing. I love it. I love it.
But like that kind of stuff, nobody's telling people to hush then, unless they're actually like being a disruption of some kind. Okay. But yeah, I mean, I'll tell my husband. So before we were together, he was at the Kessler for a show, and he didn't know that we kind of have like this etiquette policy, right? and he got shushed multiple times, and he loves to tell the story. He got shushed by Jeff Lyles more than once for talking during a show, and he was so confused and irritated, and then he realized that that's how their venue's set up in the policy, and like he's a musician and a music fan and like all those things, so he would never intentionally do something rude. But yeah, so it was so it's kind of a story we laugh about a lot, and he's like, I didn't know. And now you do.
Now he knows.
Yes, for sure. So, but yeah,
awesome.
you know, it's all about like, it's about the artist experience too, right?
For sure.
First off, if you're loud enough that your fellow patrons are shushing you, then you're probably being disruptive to them. And guess what? They bought a ticket too.
Yeah.
But it's also distracting to the artist, kind of like a flash on your camera. Like that's why you don't do flash photography at shows. Like It's distracting to the artist. That doesn't mean all artists don't want some banter and things. Some of them do.
Sure.
Some of them seek that out. That's on them.
Yeah.
We just try to create an environment where it doesn't have to be that.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of conversations, or I've had a few conversations on this podcast just about the state of kind of the music scene and music fandom and just trends in terms of, people don't, and maybe it's COVID, maybe it's not, maybe this has been happening since long before COVID, where the trend seems to be fewer and people going out to live shows.
Right.
Is that something y'all have seen as well? And how have y'all kind of dealt with that? And has it been mostly since COVID, or did it start before COVID?
I mean, I see what people are talking about with that in general, because I have heard that conversation as well. I will say that what I see on our side is people are making the decision later about whether they're going to go out.
Okay.
That's one of the biggest things that we see, and all venues see that.
Yeah.
And that I've heard from talking industry stuff.
So
is
fewer
that,
pre-sales and more.
Well, a few days before you might see a little bump, but it's usually not as like, far out typically.
Okay.
And that's not a hard rule. That's just in general.
Yeah.
That does, that there's a lot of logistics into putting on a show, though. And if there's a ton of sales, in the last few days, things have to be reevaluated, like staffing and all that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that does create a challenge.
Yeah.
But, and I'll say, I think that there is a trend of, and I think that everybody's seen this, of, people are not drinking out as much anymore.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of trends with that as well. But that's not everybody, and that's not every show. I assure you, if you go to a Red Dirt country show, they're going to show up and they're going to have some beers.
Right.
No one's worried about that.
Sure.
Okay. And every time I start to say like, oh man, kids aren't going to shows, because it's an easy thing to say and observe. Then all of a sudden you get a show where I say kids, I mean, that's,
They're all kids to us.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to give myself away too much. I'm like, under 30.
Yeah.
But that group, then all of a sudden they pack out a show.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, then that's not true.
Sure.
It's just really dependent. I think that it just, maybe they're more selective. Maybe that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. My attitude was I'd go to any show when I was young.
Absolutely,
I was like, because I don't care if I like the band or not. I at least got out and experienced something.
Right.
Because I love live music so much.
Absolutely.
I mean, I could hate the band. I don't have to buy their album, but I got an experience. And
Yeah.
That's how I always
You're
looked
still
at it.
out
I was
enjoying
like,
music. Yeah.
yeah, or figure out if I like them,
Sure.
and maybe I do, maybe I don't. But interacting and observing music and being part of it, because I don't know, I don't go on my tangent about how live music is, I think, is a uniter and a
Absolutely.
concept of shared experience that you can't get any other way.
Yeah.
So for me, that's always been huge. And so I'm like, I don't know. I get a little concerned every once in a while about those things. And I just think there's a lot of importance of communicating what venues are doing and getting the artists in and engaging with the artists, then the patrons too, and really establishing a culture of going to live music.
Yeah.
And we've been lucky to do that, especially with the Kessler, and now working on continuing that with the Longhorn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Tell me now about your what your dream gig would be, whether that's at either you playing and singing or booking or promoting, either whatever venue.
Yeah.
Whatever that means to you.
Man. So that's such a tough question. I will say I love what I do, and I'm very blessed for that. And but I also do like performing. My husband and I have been dabbling. We're working on some stuff again. So
awesome.
We'll be hopefully doing some music again soon. I've always enjoyed I was a theater kid. I like being on stage. It's
yes.
fine.
I love it.
So yeah, I would love to be playing music again a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I don't have grandiose plans for that. Mostly just for fun.
Sure.
And really just continuing to see, to build out a really great team to continue what we're doing as a company. And I'm not trying to just like talk Kessler Presents, but I think what we do is special.
It is.
The only other thing that I would say would be like a dream job would be like doing like A&R. I think that'd be awesome. Like, having my whole focus be just like seeking out bands and then kind of like steering them. I think that would be probably the only other dream gig.
Okay, fun. So. Yeah. Is there a dream act you'd love to have into the Kessler? Or Longhorn for that matter?
Yeah, the ones that I would say I won't ever get. So I'll just throw one out there. If we could get like pull Michael Stipe out of retirement to do a one-off at the Longhorn.
Yes.
Even if I'll take solo. I don't care. Whatever he wants to do. While I might be a punk rock kid, I'm also like a huge R.E.M. fan. So
yeah.
We present so much Americana and all of that, but I think there's a huge bridge in that.
Yeah.
I think there's I could like go down a laundry list of like bands I don't even want to say because I don't want to jinx myself. I don't know. But yeah, there's, I'd like to see, when we're doing harder rock over at Longhorn than we do at the Kessler.
Yeah.
And my little punk rock heart's got its fingers crossed for some heavier stuff over there. I grew up listening to like all the Fat Records bands. That was my jam. So I'm like, any of them. Let's just make any of them happen.
Yeah.
So,
you've already had Dinosaur Jr.
We did, and so it's and it's not punk, but we've got Slow Dive coming up, So like we can do some rock, it's fine. It's a little bit more. It's a different room. It's not a listening room. It's ever at the Longhorn.
For sure.
So, yeah.
Well, Diana, thank you so much. This has been really fun for me to get to talk to you.
Yeah.
Tell me, what do you I know you said you have your own podcast.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, I do a podcast called Devil's Trap Podcast. It's about the TV show Supernatural. It's a rewatch podcast. My best friend and I started during the pandemic because she had been trying to talk me into watch Supernatural for a very long time. And I hadn't watched it. Now the series is over, but she's a super fan, so I watch a new episode every week and we talk about it.
That's amazing. That's fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
Well, and then everybody, please go see a show at the Kessler or the Longhorn or the Heights if you're in Houston. Yeah. And again, Diana, thank you. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Take care. Yeah. And there she goes. Thank you so much to Diana Cox. Thanks for coming on. She was fantastic. As I said, please go support their venues, the Kessler Theater and the Longhorn here in Dallas and the Heights down in Houston. Support local music venues that are not corporately owned. They are the lifeblood of the music scene and so vitally important. Support live, local, original music. Get out there and see a show. Shout out to our mutual friend Maureen Womack for scheduling and connecting us, putting us together, me and Diana. Maureen is a true unsung local music hero, and I'm grateful for her. Again, you Austin area listeners, Chris J. Norwood and the Knockdown Dragout will be at the Continental Club May 18th, so come and see us. This is our last episode before we take a break in the summer. I want to thank you so much for listening, and I encourage you during our little break to go back and catch up on previous episodes of The Strangest Gig, streaming now everywhere you get your podcasts. And until next time, whether you find yourself on the stage at the beautiful Kessler Theater or on a pallet in the corner of some bar with the TVs left on, just remember, a gig's a gig, right?